Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to the new lecture of web engineering, and the topic of coverage is hardware, software and communications. The main hardware involved in the internet networks, we have server, communication media, storage area network. Server is a software that manages network resources and fulfills the requests of the clients. We have several types of servers like web server, email server, file server, database server. A single server can provide multiple services. For example, one server can act as web server, file server or print server. A web server stores web pages and delivers those pages to the client upon request. HTTP is the standard protocol for web servers. A protocol is a set of standards so that hardware and software developed by different vendors can intercommunicate with each other. We have many types of protocols like HTTP, FTP, file transfer protocol, post office protocol, simple mail transfer protocol. Most requests to a web server from a browser are requests for HTML documents. Types of client server architecture. We have single tier, two tier, three tier architecture. What is a tier? That question arises. A tier represents a layer or row of server. What is a single tier architecture? Presentation, application logic and data layers are handled by a single server. For example, Microsoft Excel application is stored on the server and clients are accessing to it. Microsoft Excel provides presentation interface, application logic, processing and the business logics and the data layer. Processing logic is the formulation or formulas like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, calculate salary, tax deduction, ATM, machine, deposit, withdraw, supermarket, cash counter to calculate the bill. Business logic is the business rule or rules to define or constrain some areas of business like hiring or firing, contract between employer and employees, and contract of vehicle leasing between merchants and the customers. Issues of single tier architecture. There are several issues, several problems, several limitations of single tier architecture like security, because hacker can access the business logic, processing logic, data. Poor performance because there is only one server. It supports to limited number of users. Because of that, two-tier architecture is introduced to address the limitation of single tier. What is two-tier architecture? Two-tier architecture means there are two servers. We have front-end server and we have back-end server. Presentation and application logic layers are handled by front-end server and data layer is handled by back-end server. Front-end application is developed to provide interface and application logic, processing logic and the business logic using tools like Visual Basic, Java, ASP, PHP. A backend server is used to store the data in a database like Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL or Oracle Server. Issues of two-tier architecture. In two-tier architecture, business logic is accessible to hacker or attacker. Performance constraints because there are only two servers. Limited number of users can be supported because only two servers are there. Three-tier architecture is introduced to address the limitations of two-tier. Three-tier architecture means there are three layers of servers or three rows of servers. We have front-end server, we have middle server and we have back-end server. Front-end tier, middle tier and back-end tier. Presentation layer is handled by front-end server, the interface containing the processing logic, and business logic is handled by middle tier, or application logic is handled by middle tier, and presentation layer is handled by only the interface is handled by the front-end server. So it's up to the architecture. We want to put the processing logic at the front-end server, or we just want interface and processing and business logics are handled by the middle tier, and back-end server is dealing with the data layer using a database like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Server. A front-end tool is used to deal with the presentation and processing logic like Visual Basic, Java, PHP, C#. A component is used to write business logic such as Microsoft ActiveX components, Java Beans, customized component. A backend server is dealing with the data layer using a database. Three-tier architecture is scalable to multiple tier or n-tier architecture. Presentation layer can be handled by more than one server. Application logic layer is handled by more than one server. Data layer is handled by more than one server. We can have multiple tier to n tier N-tier architecture allows the users to add additional tiers like security server. Front-end server can have security server, middle tier can have a security server, we can have web server, we can have file server, we can have print server. N-tier architecture is the most widely used architecture among all client-server architectures. The reason is that upgradation is very easy. A programmer just needs to replace the old component with the new component. For example, business logics are continuously changing and we can replace the business logic component without changing the front end and the back end. Another example, Microsoft Word processing application is upgraded and programmer just need to replace the old component with the new one like spell checker and calendar. This is the graphical representation of three-tier architecture. We have presentation tier, we have logic tier, and we have the data tier, the three tiers. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.